Hello. Okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. Here is my spoiler-free review of A Working Man, an action thriller directed by David Ayer and based on a book titled Levon Cade by a Chuck Dixon. I've never read the book, so I'm not going to be able to compare it to that original source in which this is adapting. The screenplay is also written by David Ayer and Sylvester Stallone, and it's also produced by Stallone, something that I didn't know until the opening credits. And that got me intrigued. That's not me saying I'm really a massive fan of Stallone as a writer, but it got me intrigued, as well as the fact that I actually quite enjoyed The Beekeeper. It's Jason Statham doing his thing, that we've seen 100 times before, and you've got the same year with A Working Man. But something that I've enjoyed about these movies is how it taps in to a certain era and type of movie that I grew up with watching and just admiring. Those 80s and 90s action B-movies or straight to video VHS films and films like Under Siege and all of that. There's just something about these movies that David Ayer, I feel, does a pretty good job at sort of capturing. That kind of just gets me excited, because these are films that I grew up with, really, really enjoying. And sometimes all you want or need is a film to just entertain and just be lost for 2 hours and just turn your brain off. Not every movie has to be this kind of very deep, highly emotional ride. We need movies like this sometimes because they are fun, they are entertaining if done right. So, A Working Man. The film follows Levon Cade, a former Royal Marine commando turned construction foreman. When his boss's teenage daughter Jenny is kidnapped by Russian traffickers, Levon takes matters into his own hands, using his military skills to rescue her. And just from the synopsis alone, yes, Taken is probably one of the first movies that come to my head. This is a film, a plot, a story that we've seen a million times before, with Jason Statham playing a character that we've seen him play, bring to life a million times before. But if done right, these movies can be entertaining. The question is A Working Man a good film? Is it a fun, entertaining movie where you can just get immersed into the action and kind of root for our main hero and actually get some satisfaction out of it? Is A Working Man one of those movies? So I'm going to start with a positive, and I'm not sure if this is actually intentional or not when it came to crafting this movie, but one of the things I did like and I did appreciate is that it kind of felt like it was paying homage to those movies that I mentioned, the 80s, the 90s, action B-movies, whether they be straight to video or VHS, or, movies like Under Siege and all of that. It has that kind of same essence about it. Like, I could feel, it has that kind of same aesthetic to it in the way in which this film is crafted from every level, from just sort of the set design to how the action plays out, from the, the story to the writing, which isn't great. Like, the writing is, it's not great, but it also works, I felt, for the type of movie that they are making you. And so I feel like again, this could just be me and my own sort of personal perception of the movie, but I did feel like it was a homage to a certain era of movies that I grew up with loving, and it does tap into that kind of nostalgia, I felt, very, very well. And I think they did a great job in sort of bringing that to life in a way that felt authentic. Yes, it's corny, it's a little bit over the top, it's silly, it has a very generic story with writing that at times can make you sort of wince or cringe, but it kind of all works for what I felt like they were attempting to achieve here with A Working Man. At the same time, I sensed there was this sort of uncertainty behind what they wanted to do with this story. And what I mean by that is, yes, it kind of, for me anyway, leans heavily into those sort of type of movies that I've just mentioned. But at the same time, there was a hint of something, dare I say it, deeper.
What did you say?
Within the writing. Like I said, look, the writing isn't great, but during the first, I say, 10 to 20 minutes where they are establishing their characters, there is a hint of something deeper there when it comes to our main character of Levon Cade, who I felt like was brought to life. And I'm going to use this word here. I never thought I'd use this word, you know, to describe Jason Statham's acting, but beautiful performance.
What did you say?
From Jason Statham. Like, I'm going to touch on Jason Statham a little bit later in the review, but I felt like he was great here. And there is a hint of perhaps something a little bit more human with the themes that they are exploring. But at the same time, there's this messiness to how the story sort of plays out, mainly within the first act. Like, it's very breezy, but it's not breezy in a way that's organic or natural or just flows very smoothly. It felt even engineered to just move the plot along. I was almost as if initially there was more development there was more depth there, because to be honest, there isn't really enough in terms of character development for us to really get emotionally behind these characters, especially the relationships. For example, with Levon Cade and the daughter, of this family that he's working for, with this construction business and that kind of relationship with this family. I needed more, and I sensed it was there somewhere because of how the first, say, 20 minutes of this movie, 30 minutes, just sort of rushed along, and you could kind of sense it in how certain moments were pieced together and edited. For example, there's a moment where Levon Cade goes to pick his daughter up from the grandfather, and it's a moment that feels incredibly out of place and random. Like, I get why it's there, but at the same time, it doesn't quite flow that well. Like, it's almost a moment or a scene that should have been a little bit later. Like, I'm trying to be very vague here because this is spoiler free. At the same time, I felt like there needed to be more meat behind it for us to fully understand the relationships. Even though that does come to light during certain conversations and all of that, I just felt like, yeah, there was a messiness to how the overall experience sort of played out in regards to the narrative. And so as a result, there was almost this kind of lack of confidence maybe, or an uncertainty, or a sensation of uncertainty I felt, of them not really 100% knowing where they really wanted to sort of go potentially, or how deep they really wanted to go with this story. But that also could be just me, completely me, and perhaps I was looking too much into those moments within the first 10 to 20 minutes. But there were hints, I felt, and signs of something that could have been a little bit deeper. Like I said, this is not going to be one of those movies that's going to be this incredibly intense emotional ride, but enough for us to get behind these characters and their relationships emotionally for us to really care. And that doesn't really come to life, but there's hints of it. Okay, so now let's talk about the other big positive for me, which I've already briefly touched on, and that is Jason Statham as our main character here, Levon Cade. I really dug his performance in this movie. Now, don't get me wrong, he's playing a character that he's played, countless times before. But there was just something about his performance. It was very nuanced when it comes to sort of in regards to what I was talking about just previously, when it touches on those kind of more human, deeper themes with what his character is going through and his history, and sort of his relationship with his wife and what's happened there, and his relationship with his daughter. There are just something within these very kind of brief moments within the first 10 to 20 minutes that give us sort of an insight, or sort of a glimpse into something deeper, a human story with this big beating heart. And you sense that through the performance of Jason Statham, where the writing completely fails. Like, the writing just does not... The writing for me just fails to add that kind of humanity or depth needed, really, to sort of really kind of get behind these characters emotionally. But Statham's performance somewhat kind of makes up for it. There is this kind of weight there behind what he's doing with the character. And don't get me wrong, it's not Shakespeare. This is not an Oscar-worthy sort of nomination or anything. But there was just something very compelling about Jason Statham in this movie, in how he was bringing the character to life. It looked like he cared, not just for the role, but, it felt like he cared about what it was that he was doing. And there was this layer there. I could just sense this kind of deeper sort of layer there behind how he was bringing the character to life. And maybe, again, this is just me. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but that was my perception. And for me, personally, I felt like this was, out of the movies that I have seen Jason Statham in, I felt like this was his strongest performance that I've witnessed. I really liked him in this movie, whether it be the action scenes or those sort of the more kind of somber character moments, and sort of that kind of the glimpse of his relationship with his daughter, or this family running this construction business. I really kind of appreciated those glimpses, or I really liked what I was sort of getting a hint at, basically, within those moments. In fact, after watching Jason Statham here, and I like Jason Statham anyway, but after watching him in A Working Man, I'd like to see him take on something else. Something perhaps a little bit more complex and deeper, because I witnessed something here in this movie where I feel like we could have, that moment for Statham.
This is my moment.
Just like with a lot of other actors of the same kind of ilk, I just feel like there is something there where, you've got a film coming just around the corner where he is going to blow everyone away. And, yeah, look, I really like Statham in this film. Another aspect that I really liked about this movie, something that I didn't expect myself to be saying, or, in regards to a movie like this, and that is its cinematography. I feel like David Ayer here does a really good job at kind of capturing or conveying that kind of very dark, gritty underworld that is human trafficking through the visuals, through the lighting, through sort of how the camera is used. I mean, it is vividly brought to life through how the movie is crafted from a visual perspective, to a point where, they do a very effective job at immersing you into what is a very dark, gritty world, a very dark, seedy, gritty world. And that is captured vividly through how this movie is brought to life visually. Like, there are some stunning shots in here that I just felt like, from a lighting perspective, to how certain scenes are framed, and just the overall look. Like, it felt like I was within this world, within this story, with these characters, in this kind of very dark, seedy sort of underworld. And I used the word immersive there. And that is something that this experience was. Yes, the writing isn't particularly great. Yes, this is, it's corny in places. It's pretty shallow. You can't really get behind the characters emotionally, even though Statham, I felt, was doing his damned best with the character. And it's as a result of Statham, really. I mean, I felt like, for me personally, he carries this movie. His presence and what he was doing with the character, I felt like, for me, I was able to root for this hero that he's bringing to life because of his performance. But it was an immersive experience because of just how the world was brought to life. From the cinematography to the action set pieces and the way in which the action was shot. I really dug the fight choreography within this movie, just like with The Beekeeper. There's this intensity to it. There's a momentum to it. It's very kinetic. It is shot in a way that just immerses you into the moment. And it is brutal as a result. And I just fucking love seeing, when you've got gunfights, for example, and you have this blood splatter that looks like blood splatter. Do you know what I mean? It's not CGI. You know, you've got actual squibs going off on set. You know, as a result of sort of the way in which this film is crafted, it's almost got this kind of very traditional style of filmmaking to it. It adds this sort of, it feels more authentic. It feels more tangible as a result. Yes, you've got all these other kind of issues, like these movies did have, you know, the movies that I felt like it's paying homage to from the 80s and the 90s. At the same time, you could still get immersed into it as a result of how it's all being brought to life, because it feels more tangible, because it feels more authentic, no matter how shit the writing is, or, you know, it was fun. It was entertaining. You could sense the passion behind the scenes in sort of bringing these action set pieces to life, and just how these moments, these fight scenes would just sort of play out. And, you know, when Statham grabs someone's head and drags it across a fucking surface, it looks brutal, it looks real, it feels real, and it makes you go, oh. And that is something that I miss in these type of movies today, and I feel like David Ayer is doing a really good job at capturing that within his films. Like, yes, it had issues, but I just sat there thinking, I'm enjoying this. This is taking me back to being a kid, you know, watching those movies that I shouldn't have been watching, by the way, but movies that sort of really fueled my passion for film because of that kind of traditional style of filmmaking. Is it a great movie as a result? No, but it is what it is, I felt. And like I said, it could just be me, but for me personally, you know, it does take me back to a certain era of movies where, you know, you can just turn your brain off and be entertained and root for your hero. And even though the writing fails at sort of injecting some humanity and depth and layers into this experience so you can really get emotionally wrapped up into the character's journey, I still cared due to how Jason Statham was bringing his character to life, and just down to how the world in which this character is in is brought to life and how it's crafted. There is something just very kind of, as I said, very old school, I felt, about how the movie was approached or how it was constructed. Yes, ultimately it's a bit of an empty mess. I mean, when it comes to the narrative, and especially the first act, it is quite messy. You could just feel that passion to create something where we are immersed into a story for 2 hours and we are having fun. We are being entertained. I was entertained with A Working Man. I was having fun. You know, it took me back to those movies from the 80s, the 90s, where, you know, the violence is attached. What I mean by that is, you know, when someone gets shot, you could feel the impact. You could feel the brutality and the pain, you know, because it doesn't shy away from it. Where you've got, like, going back to what I was talking about in regards to the blood splatter, and just sort of when you see, you know, when Jason Statham grabs someone's head and drags it across the floor, you see it. And as a result, it adds to the immersion. And I just feel like films today kind of shy away from the brutality of what they are sort of exploring with movies like this. And as a result, everything starts to feel very watered down and just kind of very flat. And I just feel like what David Ayer is doing a really good job at, actually, with the last couple of movies that he's directed, is really kind of capture the essence of those movies from the 80s and the 90s, where it didn't shy away from that. And this is not me saying we should glorify violence. I mean, it depends on sort of the story that you're trying to tell. And I think for movies like this, that brutality needs to be there. You need to be able to see it and sort of feel it. You need to be in there within the moment. And that is something that I really appreciated about how this movie was crafted. Yes, it's not the greatest film ever made. But it's not a terrible movie either. It is exactly what it says on the tin, even though, like I said, in many ways, I felt like it was a little bit uncertain at the same time of how they maybe wanted to sort of take on or tackle this story in terms of sort of, do they add perhaps that extra layer of depth to it in regards to the character? Like, I just feel like that first 20 minutes was so breezy to a point. It just felt messy. There was just scenes that felt out of place or just not in the correct order, and you could sense that maybe chunks of development maybe had been ripped out afterwards. Again, I could be completely wrong about that, but that's just how that's what I sensed. So yeah, I think I've rambled on enough here. I feel like these spoiler-free reviews, I do tend to go on quite a bit, but I'm hoping sort of the passion that I have for film does come across, and I don't want these reviews and videos to be kind of condensed down just to sort of hit a certain time. The reason why I do this is so I can convey the passion that I have for film with like-minded people, and if it takes 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, then so be it. And I enjoy talking about these movies, wherever they be movies that I didn't particularly like or I loved. And A Working Man for me is one of those movies that I've really enjoyed talking about, because it is one of those films that you can just quickly discard and go, oh, it's just another one of those, crappy movies with Jason Statham playing the same character and he goes after these, this Russian mobster and all of that. But for me, it did something that a film should do, and that is suck you into its story for 2 hours. Yes, it's got a lot of issues, but I was having fun. I was being entertained. I admired how the story's being brought to life from a visual perspective, to how the action set pieces would play out, to sort of the framing of certain moments, and sort of how the camera would be used within sort of these fight scenes, these hand-to-hand combat moments, which, I'll be honest, I absolutely dug. It took me back to being a kid again, to those movies that fueled my love for film. The movies that, okay, when you look back on it, they're not that great, really, from a sort of objective perspective, but they do exactly what they need to do. And sometimes that's all you need. And for me, A Working Man was one of those films. Like, look, I've not read the novel, so I can't compare it to the novel. But I had fun. I was entertained. And I'm going to stop rambling now. They are my thoughts on A Working Man. And I will be giving A Working Man on A Working Man. But what do you guys think? Have you seen it yet? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. I've got so much catching up to do. You've got The Woman in the Yard that I want to catch. You've also got The Death of a Unicorn releasing this weekend, which I'm really looking forward to. It looks absolutely bonkers. And then you've also got the Minecraft movie as well, which I'm not really looking forward to, and I've never actually played the games, but, hopefully I'll manage to check it out and bring you guys my thoughts on that. And I am hoping to catch Snow White as well. I'm currently on annual leave, and so I'm trying to catch up with a load of stuff, especially when it comes to the channel and sort of catching those films. And just another big thank you from myself for everyone that I've connected to the channel over the last couple of weeks, days, years, months, whenever it be liking, commenting and subscribing. It means an awful lot, and it would always overwhelm me that so many of you do want to follow just some random Welsh geek rambling on about film. as I've said in my previous couple of videos now, I'm slowly creeping towards that 500 milestone. And so yeah, you know, if you do want to follow just some rambling geek talk about film and TV, then hit the subscribe button and follow me on this journey. I've got so much plans for the channel and where I want it to go, you know, as the channel grows, you know, what I would like to do with the channel as it evolves, and I can't do that without the support from every one of you, and it means the world to me that so many of you are already supporting me and and connecting to the channel. It does mean a hell of a lot. So yeah, look, that's enough from me. That's enough of rambling from me today. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.